This video was written by What If Football, a link to his channel will be in the description below. So sometimes numbers are just numbers. The number 14 barely registered an emotion until Johan Cruyff pulled over the orange shirt with it on the back. 23 was just another random number until Michael Jordan transcended basketball wearing it, and the number 7 at Manchester United is firmly in the pantheon of hallowed sports numbers, with new signing Mason Mount the latest to be given the honour of wearing it. But while some players can crumble under the pressure of an integer ironed onto their backs, others can rise above the symbolic power of it. But before I go any further, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked below. But also, if you want cheap good quality football jerseys for the new season or retro jerseys from the past 40 years, then check out jerseyfifa.com, a link will be in my Instagram bio, and if you use coupon code Atlantis you should get a discount as well. I'll leave my Instagram at the top of the description and comment section, and a link will be in my Instagram bio. The first number 7 who did anything of note at United lifted the FA Cup in 1948, when an outside right Jimmy Delaney started that Wembley final against Blackpool. This, however, was long before players had a choice over which number they would wear. Back when your position would dictate your shirt number, every team in England played a WM formation, and so the outside right always wore a number 7. Johnny Giles played as the outside right in United's 1963 FA Cup final, and so therefore he wore the number 7. And Johnny Giles was quite the player to adopt the now famous shirt, since Giles would go on to become a Leeds United legend, one of Manchester United's biggest rivals. So Bobby Charlton in that same final played as an outside left, and therefore he wore the number 11. 5 years later in a 4-3-3, Charlton wore the number 9 in midfield as United lifted their first European Cup. There that night, supplementing Charlton's 2 goals with one of his own, was the first great pillar of United's number 7 lineage. George Best played what we would now call the right winger position, but at the time it was called the outside right. A suitably named incredible player, George Best was a product of the youth system and also a winner of the FA Youth Cup. Encased in the club's holy trinity of Charlton and Law, Best descended to even higher planes. He was the club's first global superstar. Whilst headlines of his off-field activities would eventually become more prolific than his goal scoring, the foundations of his stardom was his footballing ability, wowing Old Trafford audiences. Be it a trick, a skill, or his propensity for goals, George Best was head and shoulders the most renowned player at United at the time, and it was he who really created what it meant to be a number 7 at the club. From the nickname El Beetle that followed him from a sun-kissed, sombrero-wearing European Cup trip to Lisbon, to his goal against the very same Benfica team that helped United lift their first continental honour, George Best as a legend was cemented. To a less volatile degree, this global superstardom was carried into the 21st century by another academy product who had also won the FA Youth Cup and would go on to lift the European Cup for the club as well, David Beckham. Playing in what traditionally would have been termed the correct position to be a number 7, David Beckham redefined what it was to be a number 7 at United. He was a superbly talented footballer, which does need to be reiterated in a world where his quality becomes diminished because of his vast profile outside of the game. Like George Best, David Beckham would wow the public time and time again, but like Best, he was shown the door after a spat with the manager. And this brings us on to the club's most recent number 7, again disappearing under a cloud, but it's more pertinent to remember his first stint at the club, when he was certainly more George Best or David Beckham than Angel Di Maria or Alexis Sanchez. When he first came, Cristiano Ronaldo never wanted the number 7 shirt. It's unbelievable now, but when he first came he wanted the comfortable anonymity of the number 28, which he wore back home. Sir Alex Ferguson, however, knew of the Portuguese player's potential, and he knew he could grow into the shirt. After a few character building years where neither him nor the team lived up to expectations, the shirt suddenly fit him better in 2006. Whilst at this point in his career, Ronaldo was more in the category of a tricky winger who just so happened to be wearing the number 7 rather than an all-conquering megastar, his star, or rather his notoriety, was created for himself at the World Cup in 2006. Not only did he eliminate England in a penalty shootout, but he played an enormous part in the red card of an opposing player, but that player was Wayne Rooney, who was also a United teammate of his. As Rooney escaped from the glaring spotlight that had consumed former United players David Beckham and Phil Neville, the tabloid vitriol was instead aimed towards Ronaldo. But the English media's new public enemy number 1 would combine with Wayne Rooney to devastating effect over the next and his final 3 seasons at the club, and as spells at a football club go, this was arguably one of United's greatest of all time. Ronaldo could dazzle you with tricks like George Best, He could come up and score incredibly important goals like Eric Cantona, he would rise to the occasion time and time again like Brian Robson and David Beckham, and for those 3 seasons he was the best player on the planet. He was so good that he left the number 7 shirt upon his departure in 2009 almost untouchable. Antonio Valencia tried before falling back to his more comfortable number 25, Michael Owen was a bit part number 7, Angel Di Maria, Memphis Depay and Alexis Sanchez all failed in the tumultuous post-Sir Alex Ferguson period, whilst Edison Cavani was arguably the right player for the number but just at the wrong time. Then Cristiano Ronaldo returned and he got his number back and scored plenty, albeit with some regarding it as a detriment to the team. But now United have a new number 7, Mason Mount, a player with a good ceiling of potential, yet one who has been blessed with experiences of enormous finals in the FA Cup, the European Championships and the Champions League, and so it's unlikely that he will be burdened by the fee paid for him, and he has also been long admired by the club's current manager, and so it's unlikely to fall out of favour. When compared against United's greatest number 7s, Mason Mount isn't the academy product turned into a world-class player, promoted through the same system. He isn't a future Ballon d'Or winner waiting to grow into his peak. He's unlikely to be the club's most dominant figure, and nor will he suddenly ascend to stardom outside of the game that could have been said to be a distraction for both Beckham and Best. Positionally, he's definitely not an outside right or a right winger, though he could be utilised from out wide in a slightly different role. But this isn't the first time we've seen a number 7 kind of go against what the number 7 represents for United, and the man who broke that mould for United was Brian Robson. His number 7 predecessor, Steve Coppell, was busy failing to live up to expectations left behind by George Best. Despite him being a solid professional, think of him as a 1970s version of Antonio Valencia. By the 1983 FA Cup final win over Brighton, Brian Robson was at the club and captain no less, but he was deployed as a box-to-box central midfielder. New territory for the number 7 at United. Despite playing the same position, in no way will Mount live up to what Robson meant to United, and nor should he. Brian Robson was the driving force that took United kicking and screaming out of the post-Busby haze and into the success of Sir Alex Ferguson. He was there to lift all of the big prizes in Ferguson's early days, including the inaugural Premier League trophy. He was Mr. Manchester United. Brian Robson can be best compared to Bruno Fernandes in 2020. The club's success relied on him performing, yet he couldn't do it all by himself. Due to the calibre of his new teammates, Mason Mount won't be asked to perform such a role, and nor would he attain such a duty because of Erik ten Hag's squad-first ethos. And likely neither will Mason Mount be able to live up to the Old Trafford career of Robson's successor, the man who directly followed him, who wore the number 7 shirt in his absence in the 1994 FA Cup final win over Chelsea, a player who grew to be just as, if not more important, Eric Cantona. As Brian Robson was a driving force that propelled United into the Premier League, the signing of Eric Cantona from Leeds in November 1992 was an act that took the club over the line in winning their first title in 26 years. Again and again the Frenchman dragged the club over the line, from overhauling a 12-point deficit against Newcastle United in 1996 to the winner in that year's FA Cup final against Liverpool. The greatest service you can pay to Cantona is that he was in the Robson mould, only sped up and laced with controversy. Cantona was chest out, shoulders spread, collar popped, standing at the fore to whatever good, bad or indifference United would produce. Mason Mount is, like his new manager, for team ethic. We know that he's creative and he can score goals, but he is best served blending into the fabric of the squad. His favoured position is a number 8. That way he can adopt the roles that will set him apart. His defensively astute play, alongside his tirelessness in the midfield, is exactly what an Erik ten Hag player is. Some may want him to put up the goals or assist numbers of a Ronaldo or a Cantona, but to say this does miss the point on Mount. The reason he has been so persistently selected for England and Chelsea is the same reason he is best comparable to Brian Robson in the pantheon of United number 7s. Mount is a player who sacrifices for the team. Obviously, supporters want the days where he scores a hat-trick against Norwich in October 2021, but the teams he plays for need the work he does that goes unnoticed. Brian Robson is famously remembered for his drive and for his goals. His managers picked him because he could do absolutely everything on the football field. And so while Mason Mount may not be as all-conquering or as spectacular as his number 7 predecessors, his versatility should definitely give United fans hope.